All right. Welcome everyone to the next session of Let's Lock It Down. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Alex Cooley. I've been with ATC for going on 5 years now. I am a Delta Team Consultant working on a lot of our client-facing projects, everything from the audit and assessment phase all the way through our project management phase.
Excellent. I'm Cameron Laughlin. I've been here just about 3 years. Prior to that, I have about a 20-year career in IT. Worked at software companies, manufacturing, and I was in the aviation industry for a little while as well. Got a long background of project management and doing a bunch of different IT projects, both in-house and externally. So coming to ATC has been really fun and exciting. Get to learn all about new technologies and your businesses.
Great. So today's discussion will be around optimizing cloud strategy for security and savings. So for those of you that are on the webinar today that are not familiar with ATC, or if this is your first Let's Lock It Down session, a little bit about who we are. We are an independent next-gen IT consulting and professional services firm. We focus on 5 core areas within our business. So that's voice, network, cloud, cybersecurity, and data and AI initiatives. And as you can see here, we go pretty deep in a lot of those verticals. So there are representatives on our Delta team that have run through many projects in all of these verticals, and we're ready to take on those initiatives for our clients as well. The great thing about our organization is that we have access to a technology marketplace with over 600 providers, and we're provider neutral and solution agnostic. So our goal is whatever our client's pain point or project or initiative that they're working on, we're making sure that we're bringing the right vendor to the table to suit those needs.
Yeah, and the thing that we do that shouldn't be all that different, but we're finding kind of is that we treat your projects like a project. We gather requirements and then we take them out to the street and find the right partners to go meet those very specific requirements. And we really guard your time. Instead of having you go get interviewed by a bunch of different providers, we do all the legwork. We do all the running around, and we'll make sure that the first time you meet that provider, they know enough about you and you know enough about them that it feels like the third meeting.
Absolutely. So today we'll be talking about cloud specifically. Within our vertical, you can see that different things such as application modernization, public-private cloud initiatives, disaster recovery, backup as a service. All of those initiatives are something that ATC can take care of for you. So on today's agenda, we will be reviewing what a cloud strategy is, some of the proper bullets to go through when thinking about creating a cloud strategy. We'll cover some case studies and some success stories that we've had internally around cloud projects at ATC. We'll then go into some cloud security initiatives and wrap up with cloud savings. All right, so to begin the conversation around cloud strategy, majority of the time when clients are coming to us or asking us about different problems that they're having within their environment or different initiatives that they want to get to the cloud, a lot of times the best place to start is developing that cloud strategy. And here are some of the steps to take through to get to that point. So the first thing that you really want to do is outline your cloud goals. So what that looks like is identifying systems, processes, technologies that you currently have within your organization and defining objectives based upon those. So whether it's a business unit need, they're being affected and they could use an initiative or move an application to the cloud that will help basically jumpstart their business unit, whether it's a key stakeholder initiative that they need to get to the cloud, or just specific enablers for cloud adoption. All of those would be items to outline within your cloud goals. And once you have those goals down and really identified on what projects you're looking to tackle, it would be a great time to assess your environment by doing an IT readiness assessment. So typically within those readiness assessments, you're going over things like disaster recovery and business continuity plans, what your internal service level agreements are, any data protection requirements that you have around your cloud environments or your potential cloud environments. All of these things would basically be assessed and then prioritized based on what's most important to you going along with those goals. And ultimately, when you're thinking about your goals and just your readiness assessment, the roadmap to get to the cloud would typically be by choosing a cloud deployment model. So that's either public, private, hybrid. Those are the typical choices we see with clients taking on projects and looking to move in those directions. So it's important to make sure that, if you have an application initiative that you're looking to move from on-prem to the cloud, making sure that if you want to do that in a public model, that it fits your requirements and goals, or maybe a hybrid model is best for you. So really understanding what those deployment models look like will help pair to your readiness assessment as well as your goals.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of confusion around identifying what that deployment model looks like, because not just the providers all have different offerings, but they also call them a little bit different things too. So you have infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And although they're very, very similar, there's some key differentiators that you really have to consider before choosing that model. So, deciding whether you want to have somebody provide the platform for you, the platform as a service. So they would actually be responsible for everything down to the operating system level. And then you're just concerned with developing and deploying your applications, your data, and then your services sitting on top of it. Whereas if you're going with more of an infrastructure as a service model, they're only going to the hardware layer, and then you're still responsible from the operating system all the way down. And they, like I said, they all have different offerings, so you can do the same type of thing or the two different things with the same provider, and not every workload belongs in the same model. So everybody does things a little different. Everybody offers a lot of flexibility, but you want to make sure you understand some of the things are going to drive you one direction or the other, right? How are you backing it up? How are you securing it? Is there integration concerns, or are there integration concerns? And the answers are usually yes, because we're seeing fewer and fewer data silos these days. So, we're trying to help people understand better how to make those decisions, not to be overwhelmed. And it really comes down to choosing the right partner who's not going to just drive you into a product, but who's going to help you find a solution. One of the big things we want to make sure is that we know the security data requirements you have. As we talked about with integrated data and with different compliance factors, that's going to drive you to one provider or another. Clouds have varying degrees of security and compliance controls. So there are plenty of options in every category, but we want to make sure we help you find the exact right one. And then the sixth bullet up there about evaluating the value benefits for cloud migration. It doesn't say cost, right? At first you really need to understand the value of going one direction versus another. And what we find is this decision-making process is very iterative, right? It's not just pick one and go down that path. You really have to understand which workloads belong in which type of environment, and then figure out the benefit from a value perspective, how you get there. So people talk about cost savings, but I really think the big thing there is to make sure that you're getting value for the dollars that you are spending. And defining your cloud target state as you go through this process, as you evaluate each workload or each application, each user group, each business unit, it's really going to help you get down into that state. So it's a big and complicated project, or can be, but we've seen people start small, right? They they can start with some of the most basic pieces and parts and gain a level of comfort so that then you realize there is a huge benefit from pursuing this direction.
Absolutely, and I think it goes kind of in full circle back to that starting point of just outlining your cloud goals. A lot of people have, you know, don't know where to start or don't know how to get started on some of these initiatives. But having those high level conversations with our team, we can have providers come in and help assess, like give assessments of IT readiness and help you outline your cloud goals. So it's really just getting started and having those open-ended conversations will lead to building a strong cloud strategy.
There's something a lot of people aren't aware of is that some of the public cloud providers will provide funds to partners to help with those migrations. So knowing the questions to ask, knowing the right people to bring in, it just makes your life easier. You don't have to do it all alone.
Absolutely. Yeah, so let's go into a few case studies. So these two scenarios we've taken on internally at ATC. And Cam, let's highlight those a little bit further.
Yeah, so everybody's starting from a slightly different place, right? The first client that we worked with had everything in-house, kind of a legacy customer. They were facing aging hardware, looking at spending, 6 to 7 figures to replace essentially their entire data center that they've hosted for years and years. And they didn't really want to do that. They were prepared to, but we kind of talked through a better way. So we looked at, instead of just doing the same thing over and over again, where they're buying hardware, they're migrating their VMs internally, they're continuing to do the backups and their own disaster recovery. We brought in first we sat with them and understood what they had, and then introduced them to a partner who was able to help them build a plan. And we sat right in the middle of this and helped guide the process to take them into some private cloud for their virtual machines, and then some public, right? They went with Azure Directory Services, and they have some database and applications out there as well. And it was the first time they'd really done it. They started very, very slowly and really were not eager to make that move. But as soon as they started seeing the benefits of not being their own data center provider, they sleep better at night. They have a lot of help now. And really, when you look at, I'll call it kind of that fractional model where you're not paying full time for a person to manage your environment for you. It's an add-on service with, the hardware and software services. The value is just there, right? And it's done properly every time. It's done, in a timely manner, and it's not something the client has to do on their own. They still have full access to all their environments. They still manage their own applications as much as they want to. They can still provide access, but it's been a game changer for them as a business.
So within that scenario, you talk a lot about the value that was brought to them making that change, but did that lead to any cost savings as well, moving from a lot of on-prem equipment to the cloud?
So the first one is not having the huge capital outlay, right? Instead of spending, a ton of money up front, they were able to put together an operating model where they're going to send a set amount each month. And then also having, by freeing up the time of their team, not doing backups, not having to manage all of the little things that they really had done just for years and years, and allow their IT people to really focus more on the business side. So there's a lot of soft savings there, which I think probably applies to the vast majority of environments. In the second scenario, this one we see a lot where folks have made a jump into some private cloud or public, and they maintain some line of business applications or their ERP system on site. They were in the public cloud, but didn't realize the savings they thought they might by doing it. It's very easy to get into, but then, once you're there, there's a lot of costs that you don't necessarily think of upfront. So every time your data moves, you pay. And it's just, it's hard to estimate that unless you have a really, really good handle on your environment. So moving into that model, while they did it quickly and it seemed like it had some benefit, and it did, there was much more cost in it than they ever would have anticipated. So they actually migrated out of the private cloud back into a public cloud. They went with an infrastructure as a service model with one of our local private cloud providers, and a total game changer for them. They have complete visibility. They have disaster recovery as a service. They have backup as a service. That provider has really just changed the game for them. They still have complete control in a co-managed environment. And it's just absolutely changed the cost that, they're spending, the visibility they have into their environment. It's just made them, again, more nimble. I think when you make wise investments on the cloud side, you just give your business a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and I think that does a great job at parlaying into cloud security. So by moving to that infrastructure as a service model, it made their environment a little bit more secure. So let's talk about cloud security just a little bit further and how it's related to that. So these are a ton of just bullets around cloud security and different things that clients should be doing within their environment. We'll only highlight a couple, but two that come to my mind that are really impactful that I've seen impact organizations in a positive way would be leveraging cloud detection and response approaches, as well as consolidating cybersecurity solutions. So there was a recent engagement that we were a part of that the main pain point was vendor sprawl and just not really good visibility within their cloud security practice. So one thing that we did from the start was really assess that environment and go back to that fully architected cloud strategy and making sure that we were checking all the boxes on what they were looking to solve for. So separate endpoint, separate network, separate SIM solutions, no visibility within their Azure instance. So really taking a step back and leveraging those existing investments and navigating these waters of the cloud marketplace to land on a provider that would give them kind of a single approach to all of those technologies. So providing greater visibility into their cloud, but also their entire infrastructure as well. So now they're seeing what's going on within their network, seeing on what's going on within their cloud, and taking all of that telemetry into a single pane of glass. So administrators aren't having to go in different areas. They're not having to manage different support agreements, manage different maintenance agreements. All of that is now baked into one, which just leads to a tighter cybersecurity posture because now with all of that telemetry in one place, the response and remediation time when there is an event that happens has come down drastically. So I know that that's created immense value for that organization and created some cost savings as well. Leveraging the existing investment into endpoint technology and then bringing in a provider that can cover all of the other resources has been a game changer for them.
I think one of the things about that though is by bringing everything together, they've reduced their risk, right? Because they know what's going on and they have, with the consolidated SIM and with SOC as a service, they have eyes on glass that are not their own, right? They're experts that are looking at it, and a lot of people don't realize just how cost effective that can be.
And giving more visibility into their Azure applications.
And it's not that anything was broken before, it just wasn't optimized.
Absolutely.
I think that's a big piece too, is optimization, right? From a security perspective, limiting your tools or at least integrating your tools. There's plenty of point solutions that work together, but you have to get them into the same dashboard. One of the other pieces I think is extremely important is when you look at cloud security, think about cloud as another node on your network, right? Zero trust approach. folks who have zero trust networking, right? They're the days of connecting in through a legacy VPN are just not efficient anymore. So many resources sitting in a cloud, you're paying for bandwidth to come into your head end and then essentially doing a U-turn and going back out to a SaaS application. Well, with a ZTNA approach or by rethinking how you're doing networking, you're able to connect into, a SASE provider, into their, private network and then connect securely into your cloud-based resources. Gives you that visibility as well that you may not realize you're missing until you have it. But once you have it, you can't go back. You can't imagine how you lived without it before. And, one of the things up here, cloud security policies, those are all implemented, alongside of a project like this. And then the one at the very top, which is kind of an interesting, there's a savings piece here and there's a security piece here, but monitoring for misconfigurations, right? From a security perspective, you want to make sure everything is configured properly. People have the required level of access and no more. That's a basic principle that I'm sure you're all familiar with, but from a savings perspective, right? These platform providers are not necessarily interested in you having everything optimized, right? That's not their job. Their job is to provide you the platform and have you pay for the services that you're contracted for. When you bring in a partner to help you optimize that, you realize the savings, right? They know the tips and tricks. They know how to minimize the challenges that you have with configuration, and they help you get that value out of your investments. It may not start as cost savings, but what we're seeing is these providers, these third parties, help optimize it, and they pay for themselves and then some.
Right.
So, from a whole cloud savings perspective, right? We try not to just talk about dollars, right? We talk about value. You may be spending something very similar to what you're spending today, but the value just goes up, goes off the charts. So the way you do that is by finding the right providers. You can always find ways to spend money for services, but making sure you've got the right folks delivering exactly what you're looking for, and really taking the time to understand what's out there. This phrase is very tired, right? The art of the possible, but it's true that you really have to understand what's possible out there in the marketplace, because the tools are changing and evolving, and all these cloud-based providers can roll things out so quickly. So knowing what's out there, shameless plug for ATC, right? That's our job, is to stay out in front of it, making sure that we are educated. We turn around and educate you so that you can understand the best way to spend your money. And then, software licenses. We talked a little bit about hypervisor pricing. Finding someone who's going to help you manage that most effectively, right? Having your contracts set up so that you can expand or contract as needed. It's always easy to add. It's a little bit more challenging when you want to contract. So, working with a partner who can help you on that side of it as well.
Yeah, and I think that from an automation standpoint, as well as software licenses, a lot of these providers have backend systems to help track that information. So knowing, when those software licenses are coming up to expire, but just leveraging automation within those platforms to do that on a monthly basis or on an annual basis. Your big providers like AWS, Azure, GCP, they're not doing that for their clients. Bringing in those other providers will definitely help realize some of those cost savings.
For sure. And, kind of circling back to it, it's interesting that the public cloud providers will pay for those third-party companies that are their partners to help you implement and to help you optimize. They just won't do it themselves.
Absolutely. All right, so that's all we have for today. Our next Let's Lock It Down session will be on Thursday, July 25th, 2024. So make sure to stay tuned for that. And if you have any questions or want to learn anything more about cloud optimization, security around the cloud, or just potential cost savings, please feel free to reach out to anyone at ATC. We'll get you directed in the right direction. And that's all we have today. Do we have any questions in the chat?
This point, so. Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you all for attending this afternoon. See you next time.